Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, first we got to cover the elephant in the room. Stabby is not here. We are down one chaos coordinator, but she tells me what she's cooking. She's sending some my way, so it's absolutely an excused absence.
I'll let you know how it tastes.
Yeah, but Nick said he's not going to let her send me any steak. He's stingy like that. He won't share.
That's because I cook the steaks, man. If she cooked the steaks, she can send the steaks. I cook the steaks.
Is it true you don't even share with your kids? It's just you? You make them watch you eat it as punishment?
I share with Stabby. I make the boy watch.
See, if you work hard, you can have a piece of this steak.
As much as you eat, here's what I tell them: like, as much as you eat, kid, you need to get a job, either mowing lawns, picking up dog poop, something. Like, we live out in the country. There's tons of vineyards and ranches and things like that. Go over there, and knock on doors, see if you can do some day work for them. Once you start pulling in some cash, I will buy you a steak. I'll even cook it for you. But until then, enjoy that carrot as I eat this thing. Moo.
You're not supposed to make me laugh when I'm trying to take a drink of my Coke. That's okay. I needed a new monitor anyway. Well, technically it's Diet Coke because it's got 0 calories and it's not as sweet. Anyway, all right.
It goes through your nose.
It does. You just proved that to me. Thanks a lot, Nick.
You're welcome. What are friends?
All right. So this is a part of the introduction where we let Marvin introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Awesome. So, hey, I'm Marvin Wynn. I am the writer of the comic book The Edge, published through Comicsburg.
And that is your imprint?
That is my imprint.
Ah, freaking standing. So the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found him. So I saw him on the BAMF podcast several years ago, and I asked Nick about it, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, I know that guy. He's okay." And I'm like, "Just okay?" And he's like, "Well, he's not Nick Garber, but he's close."
Oh
Nick
my God, you sound so conceited.
He was going through a conceited phase. I think it was because, he was pumped up about that huge drug bust they did with Border Patrol. You sent me the cool pictures, though, so there's that. But it swelled his head a little bit.
I said The Edge was a good comic and that Marvin was a solid dude.
That works. I accept those terms.
But luckily, we don't have to worry about his ego getting too big because he is married. So, he does have a wife to, pop that bubble on a regular basis.
Right.
But after we saw him, we reached out and we said, "Hey, let's come on our show and talk comics." Because I promised Nick when he came on, we'd talk comics at least once a quarter or something. Yeah. I mean, the hard part is the comics take so long to produce compared to like indie books that if you find the good ones, it's like it might be another year before they have something to sell.
All right.
No, that's why you get a Marvin Wynn on your team and on your show because God, what issue of Edge are we on now?
We are getting ready to. Well, we already released issue 11, so we're right up.
Yeah, I was going to say we got to be a double digits by now.
Yeah.
So is it just that you don't sleep and everyone else does? Is that how you're killing it?
So I mean that's one of the things that you kind of erase from your whole entire lifestyle is sleep. So like 20, 30 minutes a day and you're right back at it, right? That's how I do it. It's just like I don't sleep. It's okay. I'll sleep when I'm in my bed ready to move on.
Sleep when you're dead. I get it. I appreciate the hustle. All right.
So you were talking about Diet Coke for a second. So I stopped in the store the other day. They had Fanta green apple, Haunted apple for Beetlejuice. Right. So I'm like, I take a sip of it. I'm like, oh my God, it's spiced. So it's cinnamon apple. It's so nasty. I'm like, why does this exist? It's like green apple with Beetlejuice on the bottle. You drink it, all you taste is apple, and then it's hit of cinnamon is gross. So if anybody
it's a beverage created on a dare,
yeah, don't buy it. It's gross.
Oh, okay. Well, you just saved me. What is it for? Like a 12-pack of sodas now? Like
$30.
$10 even. I was on Instacart earlier today, and that's how much they are. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Oh my Lord, that's too much money for something that's going to make you gag.
Yeah.
If you've been following my my Facebook, all of you people who've been tortured, I have been finding all the weird food concoctions that are made into like joke memes and sharing them. like what was it? Biscuits and gravy flavored Doritos, shrimp and biscuits flavored Dr. Pepper, all kinds of weirdness. I've been getting some hate mail about that actually. People are like, who know people, we will make this end. I'm like, wow. And then talked about like missing digits and how you can't type with no fingers. I'm still going to keep doing it though. So if they stop, you know what happened. All right. Before we get started, this is the Blasters Blaze podcast, so we can't pass farther into the episode until we do the religion questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. All
right. Stargate, Babylon 5, or Battlestar Galactica?
I mean, I'm going to have to throw a lifeline in there and go right to Star Trek. And it's not even the original Star Trek. It's Deep Space Nine. Like Deep Space Nine, to me, to this day, is still one of the best TV shows that we ever got to watch. And I still watch. Like, I think I've done recently, I did my 10th whole season run of watching Deep Space Nine, and I've never done that with any other show. I mean, even up to like the Dominion Wars when it really got really good, but it was always good. And I always liked Cisco as the captain. From the scene when Q came onto the station and Cisco knocked him on his ass and tells him, I'm not Picard, I'm not going to play your games. And that was like one of the best moments in Star Trek to me, and that's why I was like, Cisco is always going to be my favorite captain from Star Trek.
I like him for a slightly different reason. As a father myself, it is nice that you see a male character that isn't the butt of the joke or, a horrible parent, because he is a father in Deep Space Nine, and his kid is in the show.
Yes.
And his kid wasn't as annoying as the kid that played Wesley Crusher when he was on the regular Star
Shut
Trek.
Up, Wesley.
Yeah, I mean, that character was annoying. The kid that played Siska's, was it Siska? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Cisco.
Siska's son was actually a decent actor. I mean, he didn't give him a lot of roles, but
I mean, and he was kind of like, I mean, you have to watch him grow up too.
Yes,
through the show, and he didn't become that super genius character or someone who was solving all the problems on the ship, or he was always he stayed in the background. Like, he was a supporting character, and he supported the rest of the characters. He wasn't like a big character that was doing everything. Like, he became a journalist as the show went on. He didn't join Starfleet like everyone were saying he was going to do as the show went along, and then become like, it was his friend, the person who you think would never have anything with Starfleet, that became the Starfleet officer.
And then the other part of that was with Wesley, like the odds of him then getting sent back to the ship that he grew up on, like they wouldn't do that. It'd be a command influence thing. There's a reason, like when you get promoted from enlisted to officer, they send you to a different unit. Even when you go from E4 to sergeant, they take you out of that because, potential for bias.
Yeah.
And so it's like they took the military, ignored all the rules, and then called it a military anyway in Star Trek. But I think Deep Space Nine corrected a lot of those errors.
Yes. I mean, it also was a long form storytelling with Deep Space Nine over the other Star Treks, where it was kind of like, oh, you may have a 2-part episode where things are continuing along, but then later in that season or even next season, those things have been forgotten that they happened pretty much.
Yeah, the weight of everything carried on. It didn't just reset.
Right. And things that happened in the first season were continuously brought up later in seasons, because there were characters there that had like their entire history changed as the show went on, and it became more a better crew, I would say. And then you didn't have that in any of their Star Trek shows. Like, there was the one episode, Year of Hell, and Voyager. It was supposed to be a year long. Like, the whole season was supposed to be the Year of Hell, and they boiled it down to 2 episodes. And then like you lose a lot of the nuance and the attraction to it when you do that with shows, because you need that beginning, middle, end of a story.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Deep Space Nine definitely did it right.
It was still watchable if you didn't if you jumped into the middle, you could still follow the episodes. They were still episodic in nature, but the episodes are linked in ways the other ones didn't as much, I suspect.
Right. I mean, but that's just the nature of the thing, is that you're still going to have those where you could break it up and have like a a box set of certain character episodes or things like that. But it's the meat is in watching it episode 1 to the end, just to see how things change as the story goes along.
Absolutely. All right. And because we are polytheistic here at the Blast and Blaze podcast, Conan the Barbarian, Beastmaster, or Sword and the Sorcerer?
So that one's a little difficult. So I grew up on all those shows, and Beastmaster was always a favorite in the house. But I don't think you can ever go wrong with Conan, especially the second movie. And not even because Arnold Schwarzenegger is Conan, but Grace Jones. Grace Jones' character in the second movie is just one of the strangest things ever, because she fits that role so good. And like, you just look at her, you're like, yeah, she's a warrior. But then the scene when she's like afraid of the rat, it just makes everything so much better. But I know you look at the first movie, like it's an R-rated movie. There's a lot of violence and there's nudity in it. And you go to the second one, and the second one is more like a cartoon or a comic book. But it kind of lends itself into that. There was that Conan animated series for I don't know how many seasons it ran, but it was Conan the Adventurer, and that show plays really well with the second movie more than it does the first one. It's like they're in like two different universes in those two movies.
True. Grace Jones, she was the Red Sonja character?
No.
Grace Jones was Zula in the second movie. Yeah. So I mean, do we link Red Sonja with those movies? Because he was Arnold was originally supposed to play Conan in Red Sonja.
Yeah, they changed it.
Yeah, I think they pulled the rights away from it because the studio didn't have rights to the Conan user to use it, so they just gave him a different name. But he's still Conan in the movie.
Same sort.
He acts like Conan. He looks like Conan, so it's kind of hard to say. Oh, what is he? Calidor or something was his name?
Yeah, they gave him some funky name.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I link them. So
I thought they were. I didn't realize it's been so long since I've seen them.
Yeah.
But
I think the Red Sonja movie is in the vein of the second Conan movie, where it's more cartoony, comic booky than the first Conan movie was.
And I think both have room.
Yeah, it's a little bit more lighthearted compared to the first one.
Right. I mean, and the second Conan movie was that I want to say that's the first. Was that the first PG-13 movie? Because the PG-13 rating was actually created by Temple of Doom, because Temple of Doom was PG, and coming out of that movie with the violence in that movie, with ripping people's hearts out and things and showing it to them, actually created the PG-13 rating. And I want to say Conan was either the first or second movie to get a PG-13 rating, because it would have been R originally, before they had that PG-13 rating was available.
When did the PG-13 rating come out? I didn't.
It was right after Temple of Doom.
Like, yeah, I thought it was always one of the options.
Say again.
84.
I thought it was always one of the options. When they all came out, it was all together. So they incremented that.
PG, R, and X. Those were the ratings prior to 1984.
Right. Yep, before Temple of Doom. Yeah.
Learn something new every day. All right. One of the crying shames of growing up and becoming an adult is people stop asking you the important questions. So we are here to back. Are you ready, Marvin?
I'm ready.
All right. What's your favorite dinosaur?
That's a harder question now, because now you've gotten like to the end of the Jurassic Park World movies, and they've introduced all these new dinosaurs into the mix, and then changed up some of the other ones and saying, oh, that dinosaur didn't look like that. He had feathers. Or this dinosaur had a big fin and it was a spine. And the one thing that you always had with these movies is that the T-Rex always came out on top in all the movies. The T-Rex would always be the last one standing to do the roar and that. But I mean, over the years, like I've become like an affinity with the raptors, because they would hunt in a pack, and that's something that you never knew or even imagined that dinosaurs would do when you were growing up. Like you knew about raptors somewhat, but T-Rexes were always the one. T-Rexes and some of the other ones were always the ones that were more prevalent. And then the raptors came along. You're like, oh, they hunt in packs, and they attack, and they kill their, like, they don't go for the kill first. They wound. So then the person will call for help, and then they'll bring other people to help them, and then they'll attack them too. So like having that, like a concentrated attack force is a little daunting, a little different than what we were used to when we were growing up with when we talked about dinosaurs.
That's a valid answer. Most of the time, people revert to either the original Jurassic Park, what they saw there, or like the Land Before Time or Land of the Lost, because that's where most people as kids encounter dinosaurs. And you kind of stick with what you liked as a kid. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I also liked the dinosaur that was like a merger of the T-Rex and the raptor. There was a made-up dinosaur on Jurassic World. I like the idea of playing mix and match and make your perfect monster.
Yeah, and I think that's as those movies went along, you had that situation. But I first thought it was when you got to the last movie, and there's a couple scenes where there's like 8-9 people in a group, and they're trying to escape, and the dinosaurs are attacking, and they're behind walls, and everyone gets away. And I'm like, there's 9 people there, and then the dinosaurs couldn't get any of them. And then when they show like dinosaurs mixing in with regular animals, I'm like, no, like they would eat everything within months, and we all be dead. There's no way we could coexist with dinosaurs existing.
Yeah, but I mean, with our superior firepower, they would be quickly whittled down to nothing. I mean, Carl Gustav, you get some RPGs in there, an AT-4 just for grins and giggles. I mean, we've got throw in some tanks because Nick loves his artillery. One call for fire and you got whole herds disappearing. So I don't know. Like the tricky one would be the ones that can fly and the ones that can swim because they can avoid people. Yeah, they might survive.
Yeah, a lot of problem with the underwater dinosaurs. So I don't know. I just thought the last movie was just like you got darts and you're throwing it at a dartboard. 9 people escape. Horrible. Yeah, the dinosaurs coexisting with everything. They're running in packs with like other animals, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So I mean that's the reason why they're probably just doing another one and restarting it somewhat, I guess.
Have you seen the Primeval series?
Who's in that?
It was a TV series. It came out in Britain on the BBC, and then they did Primeval New World. It came in the UK.
I've heard it's familiar. I haven't watched it yet, though.
So the basic premise, it's an old one. They stopped making it not because fans didn't love it, but it's just too expensive to make.
Right.
But basically the premise is there are time anomalies that allow dinosaurs sometimes to cross over when they appear. And so every one of the cryptids we have that people think are crazy are actually just them spotting ancient animals that don't exist anymore, that they would walk in and out of the time anomalies. Oh. They had one where they were on a sub and the time anomaly came in and it was like one of these killer whales from like the Cretaceous period or whatever. And this sub goes all Hunt for the Red October on this dinosaur shooting nuclear bombs, torpedoes at this freaking dinosaur. And it's just glorious. And I kept thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I'd get back in the water if the dinosaur fish were back. I might just stay.
Yeah.
Stay out of the boats.
In some instances, you might not want to get in there anyway because now you've got other animals like sharks and killer whales in the water anyway. So I don't know. It's yeah. What's the one meme? Nature is crazy.
Of course. Jurassic Park did give us the infamous line, "You spend so much time worrying about if you could, you forgot to ask if you should."
Chaos Theory was a good one that came out of that.
Yeah, that was the like, I don't know. The author gets a lot of points from that one.
Yes. Yeah.
So, all right. Because we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters Blaze podcast, we are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea? And how do you tag it?
Tea iced.
Okay, sweet or no?
Of course. I mean, it's Southern style too, and I mean, you want to.
He likes the table wine, Jr.
Yeah,
he likes that diabetes in a cup.
Yeah. Well, you want to cut back on the sugar. So, like, if I was like doing herbal tea with like cherry or orange flavor, I wouldn't put any sweetener in it. But if we're making iced tea, then it has to be Southern style.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's start talking about the thing that brought us here. The Edge comic Kickstarter. So why don't you first tell us what the Edge is, and then I'll pull up the images you sent me while you're doing it.
So the Edge is a book, and I'm just going to do the kind of the convention spiel thing, because it's always the easiest one, because it's the one I memorize because I say it so much. So the Edge is a drug, and it has the ability to grant special powers. So similar to your X-Men, your Wildcats, for people who remember the book from Wildstorm, which is back again with DC. They can get these fabulous powers that they have absolutely no control over. Sometimes the powers work, sometimes they work in ways they're not aware of, sometimes they fail. But the other cost is it's either draining your life or it's going to eventually drive you insane. So most of the characters in the book are unaware that they've been dosed kind of with this drug, and we haven't explained how they've gotten it kind of attached to them. The only character that we're aware of that has been dosed directly is a villain from our first story arc, which is Revenant. And he came out of it with the ability to duplicate himself if he bleeds. So this new Kickstarter is going to introduce the team of the Reign and their leader Chaos. So it's kind of a double meaning there, Reign of Chaos. So it's the Reign of Chaos. So the name of Chaos, and then the team itself is called the Reign. This is going to be 5 issues in a trade, and it goes over that whole entire story arc of how this character Chaos is forming his own army because he wants to strike first against humanity before they decide that they want to eliminate all these people who are starting to pop up with powers. Each character in the Reign is named after a fallen angel. So you've got Azael, you've got Rahab, you've got Celios, you've got Vol, and that's that team. So a lot of this is going from points of references that I'm like, as you go along the story, you'll start to realize why these things are the way they are. And the character Vol there in the front, that is a dormant alien that she is wearing as her costume.
Oh wow!
So
all right. So
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You mentioned 5 episodes in a trade. What does that mean, a trade? For those who aren't
sure. So a trade would be a softback cover book that contains all the books. So you're not getting single issues; you're getting everything contained in a book form.
Okay.
So with a spine and
takes the floppies and turns them into a graphic novel.
Correct.
Jeff.
Well, I know you've told me this. I'm just not everyone listens to the comic episodes. We've started seeing more retention on those episodes. So I want to make sure everyone understands. Mm-hmm. So that's the nasty little trick of interviewing people to your listeners. Sometimes you ask questions you already know the answer to.
Right.
So is this available in hardcover too, if people wanted that to throw on their bookshelf because the cover looks pretty?
Right. So that's a later plan that I want to do an omnibus of a lot of the issues and get it into a hardcover. I mean, I could add that as a kind of a stretch goal for this one. It would have to be a pretty high stretch goal because, cost of a hardback is going to be almost double that of a soft cover.
Oh, it's insane. Have you priced it, Marvin?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
so,
yeah. It hurt my bank account. I didn't even spend the money yet.
Yeah. So we're actually looking for a printer, and unfortunately, like in some kind of situation, we may have to print overseas.
So what I'm going to do right now, dear listener, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or any of the other fine audiobook podcast platforms, this is one of those episodes where I really think you should pop on over to BitChute, to Rumble, to YouTube, and watch the episode, because obviously we can tell you what's on the image, but seeing is believing. So either listen and open up the Kickstarter page, or hop on over and watch the video, because I'm showing images that he shared as part of the Kickstarter advertisement, so you can see some of the art style that he throws in there, which is, I think, pretty detailed and bright. I am not an artist, so Nick does all the art talk, but I do like that it's not grimdark. So
yeah,
right. I mean, we work with a lot of really good colorists, so we want everything to pop, and we want to try to give it that kind of 90s aesthetic, because that was the time where I really got into comics, late 80s, early 90s, and there was a lot of energy, a lot of movement, a lot of things where you're trying to convey that things are happening and you want to be able to follow those things. So we try our best to give the reader something to follow and to not confuse them where's the next panel, where do I go, because I've seen a lot of books where some of the paneling is a lot confusing, and I've actually saw a book where they did a double page spread and then had the paneling going from one page to the other page, and that's confusing for people. I don't know where to go. Like I talked to a woman at a convention that said that she can't read comics because her brain can't process the panels, and she's like she gets confused, so she's just like I can't do it. So I mean that's a missell for us because she said she liked what she saw, but she said her brain just can't work the panels. And like it's something that could be, it's probably a problem for a lot of people not knowing where to go, because, and especially if someone breaks the Z pattern. I mean,
what's the Z pack?
Z pattern.
Z pattern.
So yep. So starting from the left, going to the corner, down to the next corner, and backwards. So it's a reverse Z, and that's the kind of pattern you use in American comics, because you know that mangas go in the opposite direction, because you're always trying to guide the eye of the person, and so they know where to go next. So it's not. Go ahead.
When you did the flames, it's on this picture that we've got on the screen where the guy is shooting fire, maybe electricity. Was that intentional to draw you to the next frame then for the Z pattern?
Yes.
Or just happened to be that way?
Yes. So I mean, and this is. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I'm saying there's two things right here on this page that are drawing your eye. So yeah, you got the diagonal pattern that's going to the bottom left panel, and then you have the figure over here to the left whose head sticking outside of the panel and the frame connecting the two frames together. That's another artist trick to join the eye to where it needs to go.
I didn't even notice
most of the time you don't pop a character out of panel or out of frame unless it's connected to the previous panel, and that's where you want the eye to go.
Right. And I mean, I give all credit to my artist Mark Louis, because this is the stuff that he comes up with. So when you're dealing with art, I mean, you're, as the writer, you're putting the camera where you want it, and then you have to be able to trust your artist to move that camera to somewhere where it's better. And he gets it every time, and it's very rare that we have to go back and change something where we don't agree on where the camera is being placed. So this is from issue 6. Where in issue 5, where the team gets their asses handed to them by the rain, and it's something that is a continuous theme in the book, is that they just don't seem like they're ready to be kind of those heroes that are out and trying to save the world. There's a lot of disorganization. It's like Mystic is a team leader, and he tries to lead, but I mean, it's you're getting attacked and you're trying to defend yourself while not putting your teammates in danger. And it seems like it doesn't always work out. But when the foes are more aggressive, they're always going to put you down when you're fighting someone who doesn't have any limits.
That is something that's hard for people that haven't engaged in combat or fights where it wasn't controlled from a competition, that people don't understand, is that, you know, when you're in charge, obviously you want to bring everyone home. Sometimes though, it's the balance. Do I worry about the mission or the people? Because I can't always do both.
Right.
And that conflict sometimes makes coming home harder for the people that were in charge, even though most of the therapies are geared at the people at the bottom. Well, you didn't have a choice. You were just a rifleman. Well, what do you do when you're the one giving the orders? Nobody prepares you for that.
No.
And I think the fact that you caught that in an essence in one image, when most people don't even understand that concept, that it's different when you're the one making the calls.
Right. Being a leader is not easy. And those decisions that you make, like you said, either someone's not coming home, or we're going to stand our ground and we're going to fight to the last man. And sometimes that's not an option for someone, and they'll panic.
Yeah. That was one of the things that was really hard to learn when I made sergeant. Luckily, I had a platoon sergeant who'd been around the block a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me sometimes you'll have to give orders and people will die, but make those deaths count if you're going to do that.
Right.
Because that's the last thing you want is they died. Like that's, and it's, I was guarding a Connex box full of bubble wrap or something stupid, right? Like, it is rare in, I think, art in general. And by art, I mean literature, movies, books, comics, whatever, where people actually get that. I mean, for most people, it's just like they skim the surface of it because they've watched a few G.I. Joe episodes or, whatever. They read a badly written book from the 80s and they don't understand like the nuance. Right. So I'm always pleasantly surprised when people seem to get it.
Right. And I mean, and those shows didn't have like a lot of consequences for actions. But there was a time when there was an episode, I think it was the Revenge of Cobra, where like they were in the mode of the Joes are lazy and they're not up to snuff anymore. And that's when they brought in Sergeant Slaughter to retrain them to be America's heroes again, because they were like, no one was listening. They were all joking around and kidding around and goofing off. And you had to bring in this one guy to kind of ship them back into shape. But I mean, that's not really a problem for the soldiers, but that's a leadership problem, right?
Yeah. Sergeant Slaughter follows us on Twitter. Just saying.
Awesome.
So one of the things I noticed, and I'm putting up, this is one of the individual episode or individual comic volumes, I guess. One of the covers.
Yeah,
while we
itself. Yeah.
While we move on. So one of the things you mentioned is that the Edge is a drug and it has certain effects if you use it. So basically the underlying theme is the cost of power.
Yes.
And I caught that because Nick did the same thing in your comic book where we interviewed you, where yes, it gave you the super cool abilities, but it cost you. Is that a common thing in comics, or is it more just indie comics where that seems to be an underlying tension point?
I think that in most cases we're trying to push boundaries, because when you look at like your X-Men and those other books, they're kind of using those powers like willy-nilly, I'll say. And it's more like, so, and there's things that they like other writers have done with, like, so there was times where they talked about how every time Wolverine pops his claws, it hurts. It's painful. It's not pleasant for him. They come in to go out and it's painful. And there was one time where when he didn't have his healing factor anymore, and Reed Richards told him, don't pop your claws, because when you pop those claws, like the germs that are on the claws or the blood or whatever's on those claws, you're bringing back into your body. And I think that like those things are touched on, and by some writers, and other writers just ignore it because you're just in that pow, pow, pow action movie stuff that you're trying to convey to a reader. But I think that with indie comics, we're able to like push that boundary and say that we're not trying to kind of commercialize something and not trying to create a Deadpool Wolverine to make movies. We're trying to tell a story. And in stories, sometimes people lose and sometimes people die. And I think that was more of a lesson that I learned watching Robotech than any other animated show ever, because there were consequences in that show. People died and they didn't come back. And I think that's, as indie comics creators, we can do that to those characters because we don't have a corporation telling us we can't do that because we want to put that guy in our $1 billion movie.
Or we want to sell the action figure.
Yeah, we want to sell action figures, T-shirts, book bags, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we like to sell T-shirts and things like that, but we're not going to sacrifice the story to appease something. So just as an example, the Revenant character from our first arc became one of the more popular characters. So I rewarded people from making him popular by taking him off the board. So I removed him from the story for a little while, because I don't want it to be a situation where the character becomes so popular, you want to like, as a writer, you want to push him more. That happened with Wolverine. That happened with Harley Quinn, where these characters are too visible. It got to the point where you had Harley Quinn part of the Bat family, and she was in the Justice League. And I mean, it's really weird to see a multiple murderer, almost a serial killer, as a member of these teams, and everyone's good with it. There was a story a couple years ago. It was a Captain America Annual #8. It's one of my favorite books because I love the cover. It's the cover where he's fighting Wolverine, and Wolverine is scratching the shield with his claws. And there's the end of the book. Captain America pretty much chastises Wolverine, telling him, "You better hope the X-Men don't get tired of you, because you'll never be an Avenger, never." And then years later, they put Wolverine in the Avengers with Captain America. I'm like, no, that's Captain America would not allow that, because he can't trust Wolverine. So I mean, and I think that's where we can draw the line there, saying that this character is a bad guy. He's never going to be a good guy. And if he ever gets to that point, I'm going to kill him, because I don't want that character to cross that line.
Yeah, I think that's the danger. But the other part of that is you never know who's going to be popular.
Right.
And a lot of times the ones that become popular is because they were entertaining secondary characters,
Mm-hmm.
The comic relief or whatever, and people love them, and they don't understand from a storytelling point of view, you couldn't sustain that for a whole episode, a whole novel, a whole whatever, because then the shtick grows old. It works because you use it judiciously, like seasoning when you're cooking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the two detectives in Phantom Hawk. Same thing. They were secondary characters meant to further the plot and be some kind of comic relief and, reliable narrators. And then everyone's like, oh, when are they getting their own spinoff? I'm like, they can't carry a book, man. They're fun in this world, but you take Phantom Hawk out of it, it's a cop show, and no one's going to want to watch that or read it.
Right. I mean, I decided to give Revenant a one shot, or a one cut book, only because he's an unreliable narrator. And I wanted to write a story that's completely told out of order, while he's telling the story to one of his clones, and the clone is calling him a liar and telling him these things that he's talking about didn't happen. And I just wanted to have that situation where I'm just diving into this person's brain and showing how fractured his mind is, and then putting that in a book and putting it out of order, so that I can make the person reading it feel disjointed about it also. That is
hard to do. It's hard to do even in print fiction, where you have the luxury of being able to describe things in depth.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, like, combat is chaotic.
Yes.
Crazy people are chaotic. In this case, is what you're describing with the unreliable narrator, someone who's not necessarily mentally stable. Think Deadpool, if you're listening, is an example. And you want to show that craziness, that chaos, that unpredictability. And you kind of have to make the story chaotic, but you can't cross that line where it's so chaotic nobody can follow it.
Right.
You're walking the knife's edge trying to do that. And if you get it right, the story will pop like nobody's business. But if you get it wrong, the story's going to flop.
Right. But
it'll fail miserably.
Yeah. But that's kind of like the line I want to walk of why do people like this character? And I want to kind of show them that don't like this guy, but at the same time, I want them to say, yeah, I like this guy, because over the years, he's become kind of my favorite character to write, because all I do when I write him is like, I go, okay, so if I was in a situation, I would do this. Revenant would do the exact opposite, and then I write that down. And it just makes the character so much fun to do. But again, like you said, it's not sustainable over time to keep doing this with this character. And eventually you have to say, okay, I need to write him out of the story for a little while, and then bring him back, and then show more of that instability, and then move him again, and just let's play a shell game kind of with it, because I don't want him to become to the point of he becomes the main focus, because it's an unstable character. You can't keep writing that kind of style.
So one example in print that I send to everyone if they want to know how to do it right when it comes to the chaos of combat in this instance, and showing it is so chaotic it's almost hard to follow, but in a good way. Tim Taylor did it in his Human Legion series when I can't remember which book it was in, but it was the one where they were fighting on the moon. So if you check out that series, that is it done right. But the other part of it is with this, like if you're going to have him be that crazy, have you thought about, are you familiar with the A-Team, right? The TV series from like, was it the 80s and 90s?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the crazy guys in Murdoch, right? He's crazy. Right. And to show he's crazy, they keep breaking him out at the beginning of every episode from the psych ward when they need him. It's like in case of emergency break glass. Have you thought of doing something like that, or does it not work because of the nature of his powers?
Well, I mean, not the nature of his powers, but because he's not a team up guy. So even though, in the second storyline, we have him kind of in the team atmosphere, and he betrays the team, like he's on the bad guys team, and he's like, well, I don't like these guys either, so he tries to kill them. So it's a situation where he's never going to play nice with anyone, but I mean, there's going to come a point where we're going to try something interesting with him and put him into a situation that he can't get out of, and then see what happens. Because I like to play in those modes of do something to this character and see how they do it. Like we do it with our character Bolt, where in issue 5 we take his powers away and we put him in the position of trying to get his powers back, and he's well aware of the influence of the drug. Somehow, like we're going to go and explain how he found us all out, but he's going to go and he's going to kind of do some things that aren't right to get his powers back. And it's going to completely change his character and change his dynamic with the team.
Okay. So what about this image here that we've got on there? Is the girl's fighting the gray guy.
Yeah.
I don't know the characters' names. Is this a normal way where you have her fading in and out to show the motion?
Yes.
Is that something you do, or is that pretty standard? I am, like I said, I'm not well versed in comics.
That's a pretty standard thing you want to show that movement, but you want to kind of boil it into a single panel. So you're showing that her weapon is this interim. She's fighting Rahab, and her weapon is an adjustable bolo. So it's a staff. It's what does it call it? Tongos, sticks. So she can break it apart and change it into different weapons. So she's hitting him with every version of the weapon that she can, and it's doing nothing. So she's like, okay, she does all that, and he just stands there and goes, okay, now my turn. And then we cut to a different page because we don't want to show that he's probably going to hit her in the face. So I mean, I just like the energy is one of the things that was really great about the 90s comics, where you're just motion, moving. Everything's always in motion and moving, just to keep the energy up, because you want that reader to feel excitement in that kind of moment.
So I know from writing books, like you can't write a novel that's all uphill, right? You can't. Eventually, you need the lulls and valleys to give people breathing room. But we're writing long form content that's significantly longer than a comic book as far as length. Although I imagine story length, like the amount of time in the story it covers, probably is on par. So with pacing wise, how do you give that balance then to give the reader room to breathe and not have it just be action?
Right. So, I mean, that's one thing that I'm going to tackle later on. Is I started writing a book, issue 12 or 13, where it's going to be a lot of action, and there'll be lulls and drop points, but it's a giant battle between multiple people, and I kind of liken it to the Battle of Earth in Avengers Endgame. But even looking at it that way, like you have to have valleys. It's a roller coaster, right? You have to have peaks, you have a valley. You have to drop someone down before you bring them back up, and then you're going to drop them down again. So you always have to have those, like I said, drop off points in the story where you get a moment to get some dialogue in there and kind of keep the story moving, because you can't have a fight. Like you can kind of make a story a fight, but it's not something you want to do continuously for an entire issue, because it'll drain people. So you'll have those drop points where you're going to have the characters conversing about something. It's something they did in Dragon Ball a lot, where you stop the action and you jabber about how powerful you are, or the character tells the character what I'm going to do to you next, and things like that, because you can't have continuously, because that's franticness, and it's something that is going to change someone's energy about the story, and it's not giving characters moments. So character
It'll
moments,
burn out your audience.
right. So character moments can be a fight, but character moments can also be standing there having a conversation with somebody about how their day is going. But you don't want to have too much of that, because it's something that people don't want either. They don't want someone sitting in a kind of like at a diner for a whole 20 pages talking about if it's going to rain or not. So you gotta have that balance in there to make sure that you're keeping people entertained, but you're keeping them engrossed in the story as well.
Well, I mean, if you were writing a slice of lifestyle story and a day in the life of a dairy farmer,
yes,
and then you could talk about the rain for 20 pages, I don't know how popular it would be, though.
Well, John, so we got this farm over here. We need to get some rain on it. So that kind of stuff. So no one's going to sit still for that. You're like, okay, whatever. Let's get on to what's in the next issue.
You'd have to throw a MacGuffin. You'd be like,
right.
oh, well, I got this old biplane. We can seed it since we haven't had rain in like 90 days. And then just the trial and error and calamity of trying to seed clouds. Yeah, we already got a story.
Hear me out. Cloud seeding is real. I'm just saying. The government just doesn't want you to know. Actually, they have tried it. Success, I don't know. But all right, so we've talked about the universe. We've talked about the Edge. The volume that you're doing is the second arc. If people haven't bought the first ones, as part of the Kickstarter, when they do tiers and add-ons, can they get the other copies, like the back copies, to catch them up too?
Yes. So we're going to, so volume 1, the volume 1 trade will be available in the Kickstarter, and we're also going to make the single issues available. Just for anybody who wants those single issues. We also have graded books coming in. So I think those ship today. So hopefully I'll have them by Saturday. Because we're going to do a live stream to kick the whole thing off, and hopefully I'll be able to show those on screen when those come in.
Where will that live stream be?
On YouTube.
Excellent. So that's linked in there. Yep. This will air after the live stream, because we're recording this like a couple days before it goes, actually a day before it goes live, and then we're airing it a couple days later. So you would have missed it if you're listening to this now, but if you go to his YouTube, it is linked in the show notes. You can watch the live stream after the fact. YouTube leaves those up, so that's a good thing. So what kind of like tiers, stretch goals, and that kind of thing can we expect? Because obviously, if we're recording this in advance, it hasn't been published yet because it's not live.
Right. So we're going to have, we actually teamed up with the guys who do wham stands. So we'll have these available. So what this is it's a magnetic logo that goes on the stand. So these can be replaced with, like, if you have one that you make yourself, so that one can be added. So it says wham stand on it. And then, so they also have book holders, spinner racks. They're like spinner racks, tabletop spinner racks that are pretty cool. And these logos are designed to go wherever these stands are available. So we'll have those available in the Kickstarter. We will have bottles of the drug itself. So I'm not going to tell you right now what's in the bottles, but we'll talk about that in the live stream. So the Edge is going to have, it has a commercial version called Octus Ris. So that's Latin for firepower. So one of the characters in the book, Marcus Drake, has been trying to unlock the secrets of the Edge since he appeared in the 3rd issue. And he's been trying to get his hands on Revenant's blood. And he's unsuccessful. But then in a later issue, someone pops up with an untainted sample. So they kind of reverse engineer it, and they're going to make this available to the public. So it's going to be a cut down form of it, but we're going to see where this is going to go, because
That's
we're going
an
to introduce,
interesting.
we're going to introduce the test subjects of this drug into the book later on also.
I mean, that's one of the things that some authors and creators get wrong is when they do this cool whambo thing, they never do the and then part where like what's the knock-on effect of that.
Yeah.
And you know, Nick and I tend to write combative stuff, so every time someone develops a sword, someone else makes a better shield. Then it just goes back and forth, offense, defense, and oftentimes you're developing both at the same time and countering to what the other guys. Which is why if you see did this person that never fought face this person, who would win? Well, it's not really a fair fight because they develop their military strategies against the different things.
Right.
One of the things that you would have to do then is figure out what society looks like if you release this. How does that change the world? Yeah. Are you prepared to unleash that Pandora's box? Because man, oh man, oh man, it's going to change everything.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, this is why we went with kind of a really, really cut down form of it.
Right.
Because I mean, it's kind of reactionary. The drug itself is reactionary to the person. So some people will get a little bit of taste of it. Some people will get nothing. So there's some underlining DNA, RNA factors that trigger things. But like I said, that we're ready to play this game, and we're going to turn the world upside down, and we're going to see what's going to happen.
Is it contagious once they've been infected, I guess, if that's the right word?
So originally, yes. So originally, our tagline, and somehow camera's all winky here, was the infection spreads. And it was something that I dropped in 2020 for obvious reasons. And I've been tinkering with bringing it back to make it so that not that it's contagious, that it infects the person to the point where it makes them really a little more unstable than they are in the current storyline. We're talking about people exploding.
Well, then the other part you've got to factor in is you make it contagious. Is there a half-life to that contagion?
Right.
Or is it permanent? And that's a lot to factor in because, like I said, those decisions will drastically change the world you've created.
Right, because then now you're looking for a cure. Is there a cure for this infection? And I mean,
you end up with society in like hazmat suits and mop gear, too.
Right?
Miserable.
Or wearing masks going to the grocery store, right? But I mean, it's and this is the fun part of it, is that there's so many directions that we can take it as we move along. And like we kind of in issue 9, as we close out this chapter, we open up this whole entire thing where there's a bleed effect, kind of where we're starting to see other characters from other indie books showing up and being part of the story then. And eventually we're going to have to go to war. And it's who we're going to war against is going to be the part where I haven't spoiled it yet too much. You know, I'm a spoiler guy. I like to spoil my own stuff. I like to throw things out there and say, hey, did you guys know about this character or that character? And like, oh wow. And then people forget about it, and then I do it again and again and again and again as we get closer to that part of the story. But there's a lot going on here. And we're just now digging in to some of the background, like with our character Mystic and his swords, and we don't explain like is this power that he has coming from the swords? Is it him? But we're going to go into the background of the swords and show the lineage of these swords, because other people have held these swords in the past, and it's coming to the point where he's kind of being influenced a little bit, and he's going to stop. He's not going to like it again because you're trying to tell him, hey, I didn't get to finish what I did. Can you help me do this? And he's going to tell these other things that are talking to him to shut the hell up.
Okay. That's going to be an interesting one to parse. Is it the swords? Is the guy crazy?
Yeah.
So we talked about the infection spreading.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we haven't addressed yet about that is, does it get into the food supply? Because if it spreads, does it get to the animals and we start eating it? Does it get to, like, obviously that is a weak point in society, is our food supply. And if it gets into the food supply, what happens?
Right. So I mean, like I said, is that's something that is in the back of my head on how how to move it forward. Right now, it only can affect human DNA, RNA, whatever phrase or words you want to use, and that's that. Because you're talking about kind of like building blocks of life, and we do share some DNA with animals and things like that, but we kind of have
Especially
to,
apes.
yeah, we have to push it into a certain block, so then the things don't get out of hand, and then I'm having to cover those bases. So
Yeah.
right now I'm just trying to cover first and second base. Third base is open, and if someone gets to third base, then things are probably going to go a little batty. But like I said, it's in the back of my head, and it's a reason why I kind of had to drop that infection spread things. We do have the one character Chaos who is kind of infected with it. And that's why you see like his costume and his skin is changing colors. But we're kind of leaving it there, and not in that instance for that character. And the reason it's like that because he doesn't give a damn about using his power. He uses his powers like all day long. And it's kind of like if you remember how Cable from X-Men was infected with the techno organic virus, he had used his powers to hold back the spread of the virus. And this is kind of happening with Chaos, where some of his power is being used to stop what's happening to his body. So he's using his powers that's causing him pain to stop his powers from causing him pain.
Okay. So obviously the Kickstarter link will be in the show notes because you graciously sponsor the episode. So you can go back to Kickstarter. Please do. We like to support indie creators. And one way to, stem the tide of all the stories from creators that don't like you is to put your money where your mouth is. And, there are plenty of, and we don't even need to get political, where they just don't seem to like their customers or the stories they're telling. And they're, stories you grew up on and you loved, and then they shit all over them because they want to make it their own instead of just making their own thing. And so we've always said, well, then go indie because, they're basically filling that niche. They're giving you what you want, but they can't keep doing that if you don't support them. And in this case, support means money. So back to Kickstarter. I'm assuming you have a digital version, correct? So if people don't want to go all in, like too high tier, they could just get them like a PDF or something?
Right. So digital versions will be available, and in some instances, international shipping is unattainable. Not for me, because I am really willing to give that a shot, but I don't like the idea of someone paying $60, $70 to ship a book. So if the shipping costs to your country is too high, I apologize, but the digital version is available. The only thing that we've been looking towards is trying to find printers in their countries and setting up deals with them to print locally to cut that shipping costs down to almost like normal shipping costs, $5, $6 or something like that.
Okay. Is there anything about the Edge universe that we didn't ask that you think the listeners and viewers at home need to know?
So, I mean, you brought up not really as far as the Edge, but as far as how people are walking away from certain books. We actually addressed this with a retailer on a show a couple weeks ago. And I think that the one thing that we are looking for is our retail partners to suggest our things. If someone is reading X-Men or something like that and they drop it, I would hope that retailer is suggesting a more indie book to them instead, saying, hey, I know you don't like this book anymore, but I mean, this book is similar to that. You may like it. There's not 60 years worth of backlog. It's a brand new book. Issue 1 in some form will always be available for you to purchase. So there's none of that artificial, oh, we're out of print kind of stuff. So, I mean, I hopefully retailers are listening, make those suggestions to your customers so that you don't lose a customer and we don't lose a reader.
Absolutely. So this is the part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part. Speaking of reviews, obviously, if you sell those reviews on Comixology, which Amazon owns, the digital copies, they don't own the digital copies. They own the digital platform to sell comic book copies. If you buy it there, obviously, it's an Amazon property. you can review it. But if they're not buying from there, if they're buying from either in-store retailers or they're buying directly from you or they get it at the Kickstarter, where would they go to review it? I don't know where people go for comic book reviews.
That's loaded. That's a loaded question. I mean, I think in most instances people are starting their own blogs and reviewing their own comics. But I mean, there's and it just dropped out of my brain, the website, because you can order books through the website also. Legion of Comics is an option. So and I actually have been painstakingly adding all the books to Legion of Comics. So that's an option. Like, you can do reviews there. Previews doesn't do reviews. But I mean, I think, to me, the best review you could probably do is, like, feel free to reach out to me on the socials, or post on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and tag me in it. I mean, I accept all reviews, man. If you love it, let me know. If you hated it, I accept that too. But like I said, is that, I mean, we're out here pushing forward, and we're trying to give people some entertainment that they're going to enjoy, and not any baggage. I mean, the book doesn't. The only baggage is the characters carrying it. I'm not bringing any baggage to these characters or any kind of agenda of any kind, except for entertainment.
Okay. So what, for reviews, assuming obviously you're going to keep doing Kickstarters, because that seems to be what comics are doing, because your expenses is crazy ridiculous. Yeah. And I only thought I was complaining about editing costs until I saw what Nick was spending on things. If they buy it on Kickstarter and they get it, are they able to leave a review so people that go to future Kickstarters can look back at your previous ones? Does that work that way?
I don't think Kickstarter does reviews. I mean, like I said, is that there's a comment section if you want to leave comments on there on the Kickstarter about how much you love everything that I do and things like that. But I mean, like I said, is that it's just tricky for these books and where you're picking them up from. Maybe I can turn reviews on the website. If you buy it directly from us from the store, or if you want to leave a review there, we can do that. But like I said, is that your best bet is just posting on your own social and tagging the creators in those posts. I mean, there isn't any greater feeling than it doesn't matter how many people it is, that someone loved what I did, and that's energy for me to get me through that next day, so I don't sleep.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that always irked me, is when we see these review channels that would like review the latest DC, Marvel, whatever, the latest Star Wars movie, and they would always complain, and then, like, these people hate us. Like, okay, then go somewhere else. At a certain point in time, stop bitching and start doing something. Go somewhere else. Right. And that's why I always tell people, like, there's all kinds of options out there. Like, the indie revolution with comics and books opened the playing field. Okay. There's something for everyone, and that doesn't have to be political, because I don't know if you're like Taoist communist or something. I don't know if that's a thing I just made up, threw two words together, but whatever your strange of flavor of weird is, there's something out there for you. I can guarantee.
And I think that propping something up that people aren't aware of is the best medicine for that kind of stuff, because
absolutely,
if the Edge is selling 2 million copies, then the guys who are doing things you don't like are paying attention to it. They're like, oh, well, they're doing that, and that. Maybe we should try to do that, and that to get our readers back. So, I mean, support the indie realm, no matter what it is, like comics, books, video games, the cartoons, movies, because these guys are doing it. They're not doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it for the love.
And I'm going to say, is the Rippaverse can sell 1 billion copies. I think Marvin can too. So go buy his book. He's got a wife that wants new shoes. You know how it is.
Not one comic book in the last 20 years has sold over 500,000 copies.
Well, I mean, so that's the one thing, is I've heard from some people that comics is a dying industry because it's not selling. And then you look at what like manga and graphic novels are doing. And the difference
American
is
comics are not dying, but they're definitely on
life support,
a life support system.
But if you look at what's
it's
different,
the indie guys that are keeping it going.
But if you look at what's different between what manga and anime or manga and graphic novels, I get the terms mixed up, so don't at me, people. I admit I don't know, but they seem to just tell stories that are fun, and they don't worry about the rest of it. There's no message hidden right or left, and so obviously the audience is there because they're still buying it. You're just not serving them,
right? But I'm going to tell you,
you specifically, just in general,
right? So the biggest problem you have with American comics is that they're not in the spaces they were before. They're not easily accessible to the younger generation. You have to go to a comic shop. You have to go to a convention. You have to go on eBay to find these books that you want to read because they're not in grocery stores. They're not in 7-Elevens. They're not in, I'm going to show my age, Woolworth or the rack to get because of the cost. So one of the things that we are getting ready to start doing is to take these to those venues, and we're going to go into the schools, and we're going to do our panels, where we have a panel we do called Script the Store that talks about that process of creating a comic book, getting it from beginning to end. And because now you've added arts it was before it was STEM, now it's STEAM because you've added art to it. So now we have an option to go into high schools, grade schools, colleges, and talk to them about comics and let them know they still exist, because they're not, like I said, they're not where they are at anymore. So like you can have a child put their phone down and read a comic if you put it in their hands. They're not being put in their hands anymore because generally when I'm in the comic shop, the only more times I see younger people in there is Free Comic Book Day. It's one day a year where someone is bringing their child to a comic shop. Like this should be a weekly thing. We used to be in the comic shop every week to get stuff.
Part of that is the pricing got so expensive.
Right. Yeah, that's it's the problem with the way it's being presented to that person. And you take a look at those manga books, you got a whole story and it's not as expensive. And they're in the libraries, they're in the bookstore. So it's where they're at. Coffee shop, bookstore, comics. I mean, everything writes itself. We are just not being able to kind of get things where they need to go. And we're trying to, like, the Comicsburg team is trying to change that. So we're going to coffee shops. Do you want to carry comics? We're going to barber shops. Do you want to carry comics? We're linking up with wrestling events. We're linking up with people who make soda to kind of encapsulate and put something in their hands and say, hey, this thing exists. It's not just a movie. Because they think it's just a movie. No one knows these comics exist because no one is telling them or putting the things in their hands.
So this is one of the problems with every episode, Nick. Every time we do an episode, we find 5 more topics that would be cool to discuss. And then they're like, why haven't you talked about the thing? And I'm like, my page of list of panel ideas is like 13 pages long now, and it's bullet points. Right. But that might be an interesting topic, because we obviously our goal is to speak to people as consumers of the content, the readers, the viewers, whatever, and not how to be an artist, how to be a writer, because quite frankly, my sales don't justify me telling anyone how to run the business. But I do think it's interesting that we could potentially in the future talk about how do you revive, if you're passionate about books or you're passionate about this certain type of books, how do you spread the word to get it organically to come back? Right. That might be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, there are multiple ways to do this. You just have to take the things to where people are. And a lot of the things that I was talking about, like wrestling and comics, are like hand in hand. Those are superheroes. Every week on the Mondays and the Friday and the Thursday, every week there is a way. Like every state, city, county has a indie wrestling thing. They are everywhere. So I mean, if you can get those guys interested, if you can get like one of the things that is, what is a driving thing, like even here in Pittsburgh, sports. If you can get those guys interested in these things, they will drive it. So I mean, it's doable. It just takes a lot of legwork and a lot of trial and error, and just saying that if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do it fully. Like all the libraries have book clubs. Every single one of them. So, I mean, hit everything you can, because all they can tell you is no, we're not interested. And then you just take it somewhere else until someone says yes.
One of the things that a different Kickstarter we did offered was they call it the book club option. This was Michael J. Allen's Kickstarter. This is obviously for novels, but it actually was priced to get a slightly discounted price, but you got more than one product. So you could give it to a friend and you could read it together and discuss it. I like that kind of thinking because it's sort of encouraging the community that's kind of we lost when everyone just became digital hermits, you know?
Right. And I mean, it's like I said, the people are out there. I mean, you just have to get it in their hands. I mean, I see like people at these conventions and they're so excited to see something different. Like they are like, there's people that are hunting indie stuff. They're hunting it. And they're like, I just want something different than that. And putting that in their hands, they're like, oh man, this isn't like I was actually at a show and I ran out of issue 6s and I sold issue 6 kind of pre-order to people at the show because they were like, oh man, this is so I want everything, but you don't have that one issue. I said, oh, you can buy it right here and I'll ship it to you when it comes in. And I mean, they're eyes like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I can do that. So I mean, it's just about putting something valid in someone's hands, and they'll be a fan for life.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's what you want to do is build repeat customers.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of repeat customers, when your next Kickstarter comes out, you're obviously invited back. And we have your name on there for a couple panel ideas that we thought. And Nick and I have talked for years, and then life keeps happening. We're doing like an indie comics day where we get like a bunch of the artists or comic book guys. And I think there's actually already an indie comics day. We just be scheduling an episode.
It's first Saturday in August.
Yeah. Unfortunately, August is a busy month for the Garber clan. So we might have to just like pre-record that in July or something and then just air it on August.
So just to go back to the indie comics day thing, that thing is so, I mean, I wish it was better promoted. Because I reach out to stores and they're like, I never heard of that. What's this? What's Indie Comics Day? And I wish the community would come together and support it the way they do Free Comic Book Day, because it could be another huge day, not only for readers, not only for creators, but also for retailers. That it was just something new to embrace, because you've got local comic books day in September, you've got Free Comic Book Day in May. And this could be something like every month there should be some kind of themed comic book day, because it's huge. Free Comic Book Day is huge for stores. So like to have it every month would be incredible.
Absolutely. I just have one last question, dear listener, before we wrap this up. Check out the pretty picture on the thing of the Edge Comics. It's glorious. But before we wrap this up, I just want you to know, if you're a certain age and you played Little League, the Bazooka Joe comics that were on the Bazooka Joe gum, the gum will break your teeth. Don't eat it. There's better gum out there. But I'm just saying, if you read those comics, does that make you a comic book reader? We want your opinion. Weigh in. I did get a very important life lesson from that Bazooka Joe comic, though. You want to hear it?
Sure.
All right. So the guy's in driving ed, because it's the Bazooka Joe was a high school kid. And he's sitting in driver's ed. And the instructor asks him, if your brakes fail on the highway, what do you do? And the right answer is sort of let off the gas and pull over and, wind your speed down. And his answer was hit something cheap. I mean, if you think about it, if you're going to crash, I mean, the Hoopty or the BMW, avoid the BMW. Your insurance will thank you later.
Yep.
So, all right. With that being said, where can people find you on the Wild Wild interwebs? And as usual, links will be in the show notes.
Sure. So hit me up on comicburg.com. From there, you can get to me on the Facebooks, on the Twitters, on the Instagram. I think I have a Threads account. I think like it pops up on my phone all the time. I don't remember. I remember creating an account and I remember ignoring it, but somebody messages me on it sometimes. And it pops up on it but if you really wanted to hit up everything that I'm doing, hit my Substack. So Substack is Marvin Wynn, and I kind of do stuff randomly on there. Like I'll do something at the beginning of the month and then I'll forget to add something, so I'll do a second one. So like 2 or 3 times a month I'm sending something out from Substack. So that's probably the best place to hit up, because I've got back and forth communication. There's a messenger there, so that's probably your best option, is to hit me up on Substack.
Okay. And I will say, having looked at these images, dear listener, if you're listening and didn't check out the images, you really should go to the Kickstarter link and see the pretty pictures we shared. But his images are colorblind friendly. I can actually tell what's going on, even if I don't see it the way you do. It's there. So that is saying something. Sometimes, a lot of the dark stuff, I can't tell what's on the picture. That is not the case here because he went bright. It's easy to tell what's going on. So if that fits you as well, you can check this out. And you will be well served. And with that, you can find us on our link tree at linktr.ee, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, the Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page, our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades podcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Yes, that means you, Nick. I know you've been sending me those spam messages. We also have Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. Send the shenanigans her way, unless you're Nick, because she'll stab him, and we don't want that. I mean, he's only got so much blood in his body. We can't afford to lose much more. I think you get
weeks to recover the stuff already lost.
Yeah, I think the ratio we sort of agreed with her in terms was only 3 stabs a week. Was that it, or was it 4? I can't remember.
A week? It's 3 stabs every 2 months, man.
Oh shoot, she's gotten soft in her old age. What?
No, I'm getting better with that left arm block. No.
All right. And you can find us on our website at podcast.spotify.com/blah, blah, blah. Go to the link tree, people. It's easier that way. When you go to that website, you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. These episodes are not free to produce, and every penny counts, and we greatly appreciate your patronage. Speaking of, you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly inebriated. They will drink that diabetes in a cup, sweet tea, until their head explodes. Speaking of caffeinated products, if you like Coffee Brand coffee, you want a company that is American-made, American-produced. It's not a drop-shipping company. They roast it here in the U.S., employ American citizens. You get 10% off. Use the code PODCASTGRUNTS. Links in the show notes. And we get a little bit of a kickback, and that does help defray some of the costs. So it's a win-win. We like to promote it that way. Feels less like charity as well, which we kind of dig. Nick, what have you been drinking lately? You still on that bourbon coffee kick?
Yeah, until it runs out, and then I'll find something else. Or order more.
Yeah, I do like that on the one hand, I like that they mix it up all the time so you can always try new things. But I'm also a creature of habit. So once I find something I like and then it's seasonal, I'm like, no.
Yeah. Oh, I got to wait till next summer. What the hell?
Right? Or the other option, I guess, is stock up. And baristas and coffee people don't want you to know. You actually can preserve the life of a coffee if you're an airtight container and then you freeze it. Mm-hmm. It will preserve it. But again, airtight is the trick because you get any moisture in there, you're effed. So you have to seal it right and then freeze it, and you can preserve the life of it. Speaking of, well, that's a hell of a segue. We're just gonna end it. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am the overly caffeinated J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thanks for coming on, Marvin. We're going to have you back again, and it won't a year at a time is just not enough. We need more Marvin in our lives.
Yeah, whenever you want, man, just let me know. I'm good.
So we're going to have to come up with more panels that we think were a fit for you just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Nick, I promised them we try to do more comics in 24 and 25. Okay. So maybe that's something we could do, like a comic review episode. I don't think we've ever done one of those. You game, Nick? It would have to be ones we could get PDF so all of us could get a copy.
Yeah.
So that would be the trick. But that's it. It's on the schedule. We're doing a comic review. Nick, you got to hunt the right comic for us. And Marvin is coming on for that episode. I just voluntold him. This is how it works. No pressure, though. No pressure. All right. With that, we are
inundated with comic books. So finding a comic book for us to read is not going to be an issue.
Well, that's freaking outstanding. With that, I'm going to hit the end button so we don't say something we'll regret live on air. Boom!